Yeah. Okay. Bill is going to introduce all your people.
I would like to welcome everyone here tonight. And if there's anyone in the back that can't see me, I'm 6'3", with rugged good looks, and often been compared to Robert Redford. First, I'd like to introduce my family who come in from Toronto. If you please stand up in order. My daughter Rhonda, who came tonight without her 2 children and husband who is babysitting. My son Laurie, who came in from Toronto. His wife Ellen. And my grandchildren Sam and Miriam. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Anna, who has shared with me for 45 years the trials and tribulations of being in the retail business. I think Anna deserved 2 medals for that. The first time Anna came in the store, a woman came in with 2 children for shoes. She'd come up to the counter and said, I need a pair of shoes, size 9 for my daughter and size 13 for my son. Well, I brought them out, and she took them and paid for them. And when they left the door, Anna says, how could you do that? How could you let her do that? She had her 2 children with him and didn't even try on the shoes. How could you let her do that? I explained to her that the mother knew the children, and she started trying them on. The toes would be tight, and be a little narrow, and the heels would be sliding and be the wrong color. Thankfully, after that, Anna decided that her teaching career would probably turn out to be the best thing that happened to her. You can ask my children about it. I would bring shoes home for them, and I would tell them they will fit. I wonder if that's one of the reasons they walk a little funny too. Anyway, for your information, the Baptist Church welcomes all denominations here, but they prefer 50s and 20s rather than 5s and 10s.
Thank you, Phil. Just a few questions about his parents. When did you, or retirement, or your retirement, that's what we're going to know. So how are you enjoying retirement?
I've heard that song so many times since I've retired that I just don't know how to answer. But whenever Anna is with me, and someone asks me that question, she mutters softly, why don't they ask me about it? Somehow I've been very busy. In fact, I don't know if my system can handle the sudden increase in activity. I've been asked why I retired. I tell people that my children would refuse to come with me when they get to be in their 70s to take your kids to work day. So I decided that was it. I've only been allowed about 10 minutes tonight because of throat trouble. Len said he would choke me if I spoke any longer than that.
Anyways, we're going to go on with the store history. Probably, when did your father start in the business? Well, do you know?
Yeah, I know, but before I start, I'm going to tell you about the busy times that people have today. It seems to me everybody is busy, and To see your children and grandchildren, you need an appointment. They're always so darn busy with ball games and gymnastics and piano and taekwondo and birthday parties. And even when you get into their home, they're busy with videos and computers and everything. And I think I've got their attention now. So Sam and Miriam, how about coming up here? Bring your chairs. I might even put you to work. There, come on up here. I had to write a little bit of this down because nostalgia only works when your memory is good. Hey guys, your great-grandfather Martin came to Canada when he was in his teens. He didn't know a person, he couldn't speak a word of English, and he got a job in Toronto in a menswear business. Unfortunately, he passed away 40 years ago. In 1926, he married Nanny Ray, who everybody knows. My mother passed away in November. She was 3 weeks shy of 104, and she had most of her marbles most of the time. So we were very honored to have her with us that long. She was one of the first women in Canada to have a driver's license. Although in those days, up until then, no one needed a driver's license. They had limited funds when they were married, and they came to Lakefield to open up a store. To start their business, they used orange crepes in the store. It shows you how the circle has turned. Today, some of the largest boutiques now use orange crepes, costing many hundreds of dollars now, and they're using them in their displays. At that time, they lived over the store, which is on the corner where the Home Hardware is. It was a small store, and they lived upstairs to save, how much do you think? A month. They could have rented a house for $5 a month, but to save money, they lived upstairs. I'm going to pass a picture of my parents around. Would you pass it around? Everybody can have a peek at it. I think most people would know them, but maybe some haven't seen a picture.
The Hollands were in business in Depression times, so Phil is going to tell us a little about the Depression times with his family and his business.
During the Depression, mind you, I wasn't aware of all the things that I'm going to tell you about tonight, but part of them, and I did get first-hand reports and stories about other things. During that time, they used the barter system a lot. Customers would pay with potatoes and eggs and wood for their merchandise. Times were simple then. People made their own entertainment. I'm going to read from an ad for rubber footwear, and I'm guessing the year would be in the early 30s. There's a picture here of a man's and a lady's overshoe. A man's shoe was available in 1, 3, 4, or 6 buckles. The shoes all had names then. This was called Men's Alberta. The woman's shoe was called Woman's Whizzer. Reading the copy here, you could buy these things in various heights with buckle, strap, or whizzer fasteners. I had never heard this term for fasteners. Maybe some of you have. I always knew them as zippers, but whizzer sounds a little more like fun. But anyway, I'm talking about simple times. There, beside this, what's interesting is that in the Lakefield paper, there was a column, heard over the radio. And here are some of the things that you would hear over the radio in those days, as written by some member of the community. The following flashes are from station XYZ Lakefield. One of them, the regular weekly Tuesday evening temperance committee will be held on Friday evening of this week instead of Monday as usual. Some of the people will know these names. Mr. G.G. Connell has whitewashed his hen house in order to prevent his hens from eating the grain out of the wood. Mr. Judson Hull spent an evening at home recently. Mr. B.Q. Dench is spending the winter in the village. Well, everybody spent the winter. Mr. C.S. Tanner had his car washed recently. And one more. Many of our citizens are behind the hockey team, but some of them are so far behind the team that it's not expected they will ever see them this winter. So, in spite of the hard times, they did have their fun. And the town had, you can pass that around if you like, thank you. Can you hear me, anybody? Can you hear me? I may ask questions. The town had its characters, and I'll mention some of them. One was Butts Northey, who had the drugstore. I don't know if you remember, but his greatest claim to fame was that he would sneak up behind women and spray perfume on them. Now today that would be probably a case for assault, but in those days he got away with it. And a lot of men would gather around the potbelly stove in Mucker Hall's grocery store. That stove was really hot, and there was no central heating in those days, and anybody that got real close to it set their clothes on fire. Another one was Dr. Alec Fraser. Everybody would remember him. He would go store to store in the morning and get the financial section from the Globe and Mail from anyone who wasn't going to read it, which was 99% of the people. And instead of buying a paper for 3 cents, but anybody that remembers him knows that you never needed an appointment. All you had to do was show up. When you did, you were half cured, because no matter what was wrong with you, you always got a little tin of salve that he scooped out from a bucket barrel that he had in there. I guess I can talk about some renovations that took place. In the mid-30s, groceries were added to the store. And I'm going to pass this around. This is an ad. Pass that around here. Maybe pass that around so you can read it. This is an ad with some of the prices pertaining to that time. And I'm guessing this ad, I know, was 1935. At that time, the customer came in the store and asked the merchant for the groceries he wanted. The merchant would reach up behind the counter, pull it from the shelf, and hand it to the customer. There was no such thing as a shopping cart in those days. One of the talents that the retailer and grocer had in those days was tying up a parcel. Not like today with Scotch tape, etc., etc. He had to unroll the paper, put the cheese or something else in it. Thank you. And tie it with a string. There was quite a talent to that, because if you snap the string properly, it broke like nothing. If you didn't snap it properly, your fingers were bleeding. Sam and Mary, when I was your age, I used to help deliver groceries in my little wagon up the street and down the street. And I used to think when I went as far as to go to school, I was going to Mars. But also one of my jobs was to fill up the jugs of coal oil from a large tank in the woodshed. You know what a woodshed is? A lot of other things happen in the woodshed too. Anyway, most of the times, after filling the jug, I reeked from the coal oil I had spilled, and they would never let me into the store after that until I cleaned up. The reason people bought the coal oil is a lot of people in those days didn't have electricity, and most of the people on the farms didn't have electricity, and they gathered around the kitchen stove at night to read with the one lamp that they had. In those days, when you were sent to your room, you really were sent to your room. You didn't have Game Boy or computers or stereo or anything else like that. Actually, when you look at that paper, it says Holland's General Store. That's 1935. No wonder business was lousy. It's called Holland's General Store. No one could buy anything specific in there. This is a story that was told to me, and I have to believe it's true. Once on a Friday, a customer bought a roll of toilet paper. Well, that wasn't the norm in those days. That was actually a very big luxury. The toilets were outside, and Eaton's catalog was not just for reading. Actually, it was a treat for someone if they could get a hold of some tissue paper that used to wrap pears or fruit. Does anybody remember those days? Anyway, that customer who bought the toilet paper on Friday returned it on Monday. Apparently his visitors didn't show up. This happens to be a true story. I won't give out any names here. One of the problems with business in those days was trying to get paid for your merchandise. Just like today, maybe. And some customers come around and they buy something, and they would say, well, we'll pay you on Friday, okay? Well, for some of these people, in 50 years, I don't think they've seen a Friday in one of their weeks. In an attempt to collect money, in those days, you try to be gentle with them, and sometimes at the bottom of the statement, you would make a little note or write a little poem. Here's one little poem from one of the old statements. Sam, maybe you'll read it.
Perhaps you're busy as can be, loads to do and lots to see. Every day just flies right by, as your work piles to the sky. So our account has been delayed, even though it should be paid.
What's the first capital letter of each sentence? Spell it out.
P-L-E-A-S-E.
Yep, please. Other merchants weren't so quite, other merchants were more blunt. They would put a little note like, we have carried you for 10 months, and that's longer than your mother did. I found a receipt from 1938 written by my mother, and I'll read some of the items on it. I can't make out the name. Oh, yes, I can. I got my glasses on. It was for Mrs. Bolton. Well, I know there's 300 Bolton families around here, but anyway. On November 28th, 1938, she bought a bag of flour for $2.85, rolled oats for $25, puffed wheat for 10 cents, shredded wheat for 25 cents, and Roman meal. I imagine that's something like puffed wheat or rolled oats or something, 35 cents. They also bought one pair of rubber boots for $2.35, one pair of mitts for 69 cents, and 2 pair of socks for 75 cents. One thing I did notice about this is that everything is basic. There is no luxuries. There's no frozen food. There's no pizza. There's no shrimps, or there's no anything like that in here. So people in those days didn't have the luxury of having the different kind of things. This is an advertising. Do you know what that is? Ask Miriam, she'll know. You know what that is? You know what it's used for?
No idea.
That's a blotter. And of course, we take it for granted that everybody should know what a blotter is. That's used when you dipped your pen in the ink and you wrote something. You blotter. So now you know. That's a little blotter. Put out by Bata Footwear. Speaking of that ad that I just passed around, you can pass that around, Miriam. Yeah. Maybe some people would like to see it.
I'd forgotten all about the blotters. He forgot the GST and the PST in that bill, didn't he? You didn't add that up?
This is an ad, I would call this a recent ad. This is 1957. It's a New Year's dance in Lakefield Memorial Hall. And here's what you got. You got Chris Sprout and his orchestra. You got prizes, you got favors, you got horns, and the admission is
$2.50 per couple.
$2.50 per couple. Pass that around.
$2.50 per couple.
Len, do you want to say something?
Don't go ahead. We're all together more than I have.
I won't go into too many of the problems. Everybody knows there's problems in business, and sometimes merchants would make purchases that really turned out to be terrible, not necessarily through their own fault. Sometimes you would get shoes with 5 eyelets in one and 4 in the other. Sometimes you'd get shirts that you couldn't put one finger through the sleeve. And I have an example here of something. And most of the time, by the time you find out that you made a boo-boo, the company you bought them from was gone out of business, so you were stuck with it. Everybody knows what that is. Do you see anything wrong with that, Sam or Miriam?
Not yet.
No. They're clean, by the way. Len, do you see anything wrong with that?
No, not yet. Does anybody else see anything wrong with that? Don't try it.
Pass it
Am I
around.
trying them on?
Pass it around.
What's wrong with it?
There's no opening. There's no opening where there should be an opening.
Maybe it's for the middle.
That's possible. Never thought of that. I have a few odds and ends of. You want to pass this around, Sam? Of what a well-dressed person wore in those days. Here, you pass it around.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you something here that I think this is from the late 30s. And this was men's underwear. Hold that up, Sam.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's men's underwear. Hold it up so they can see what it's all about. And that was called fig leaf underwear. And I guess it's almost like a diaper vest that the babies wear today, but that was here. And here's a boot that every young hippie kid would wear in the wintertime. Yeah, imagine they'd be really warm, wouldn't they, with all that fancy lining in there. I wouldn't mind getting some of this stuff back, because it's probably no good to most of you. And if I knew I'd be up here tonight, I probably would have saved a lot more. Advertising and business, I like to have a few different ads rather than just announcing what we had for sale. I made up a few. Here's a few that I'll pass around here. You can pass those around. They're just a little different. And I wouldn't say we go back too far, but here's a sign that welcomes tourists. Can you hear me? Yeah. Welcome tourists. U.S. currency gladly accepted here at par for the purchase. We always gave a little more than the bank, and at that time maybe the bank was charging 1%. You can pass that around too. Miriam, pass this around too. What else have we got here? Yeah, there's a couple of old pictures of the store. This one I framed. Elmer, this is mine. This isn't yours. Elmer has a very big collection of calendars, and you can pass that one around. And that's the calendar that my family put out in 1928, 26 or 28. Yeah, 28. And wouldn't mind having it back. Here's something interesting. I'm going to read something from the paper. Uncle Sam turned down by Canadian government. The clergy discussing relations between church and state. There's no gas rate reductions. Tomato producers dissatisfied with prices from canners. Canadians who visit Cuba say U.S. exaggerates problems there. A big department store just went bankrupt. Guess the date on this paper. This paper was found in the basement when we were cleaning it out. Hasn't been maybe cleaned out since then. The date, February the 7th, 1898. Everything in here applies to today. But there's really one more ironic thing about this. This paper is called the last edition of the Evening Star. I'm guessing it's the Toronto Star now. The cost was 1 cent. But the ironic part of it is, this one paper that we found was published in 1898, the year my mother was born. I'm just going to read one or two other little things from the paper. They put ads on the front page. Adams Furniture. Some people would remember that. They're advertising a white maple bedroom suite. Shaped bevel plate mirror. Regular $30 for $22.50. That's not a bad deal for a whole suite. One other thing that might get a little chuckle out of, headlined, $2 day at court. Magistrate Miller runs the afternoon police court on the $2 per head basis. This afternoon, Ernest Thorne of 260 Ontario Street and John Fleming of 130 Edward Street, two men who speeded so their trotting horses on Jarvis Street last Wednesday were fined driving. W.J. Joyce, a furniture dealer at 246 Young Street, for hanging a sign over the street without permission from the Board of Works. And W.H. Stacy for driving his horse without bells. And John McCain for peddling without a license. All were also assessed $2 apiece. One more that you might find interesting here. The Army of Gold Hunters in the Klondike. You know where the Klondike is? Ice cream bar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. You took it at school? Okay. The Army of Gold Hunters in the Klondike will be recruited shortly by the first large party from England. The steamer Tartar left Southampton yesterday with 300 people who expect to reach Vancouver after leaving England. How long? In a month. Telegraphic apparatus is a conspicuous item in their luggage. I guess so. There's a lot more interesting things in here. I won't go into the details of it, but it's really quite interesting. Okay. Maybe I'll take you into a couple of the tricks of the trade. That is retailing, that is. There's such a thing as negative selling. Suppose a woman comes in the store, maybe she's size 44, and she's picked out a bathing suit size 10. And she's heading for the dressing room. I can hear that suit saying, "Help me. My seams are going to be split." You have to try and intercept her and tell her about the small make, and about the short waist, and about the material not wearing well. Sometimes you don't intercept them. They come out of the dressing room, hand it to you, and say, "Perfect fit." You roll your eyes and you say, "Okay." Weddings are an interesting thing. When a prospective groom says he will not wear that purple shirt with the pink polka dot tie, so it will match the dresses in the wedding party, you can bet that he will wear that purple shirt with the pink polka dot tie to the wedding. One time, there was a wedding scheduled for 2:30. The groom was the only one not to pick up his suit. He wandered in at 2 o'clock, so I made a little type of remark like, "Cutting it kind of fine, aren't you?" He says, "Yeah," he says, "the golf course was a little busy this morning." Well, anyway, no one really took it that seriously. That's basically just about it, but I have a few things printed up here that I'd like to pass out and let you have and read. For all those born before 1945, if there's anybody here born before 1945, they're welcome to take it with them, and I'm going to leave it with you. And perhaps, I don't get all the stories, but maybe if there's someone here who could maybe tell me a few stories, I'd be glad to hear them. So, thank you for your time.
You didn't tell us you were living next door. Where Foster's are living
Right?
one time.
What was that?
Remember, you lived next door in Walker's house at one time? I don't know when it was, but I remember.
Okay.
Well, I don't want it.
Okay, is there a story to that? No, we just
Well,
lived there.
no, but that's when you first came to Lakefield, I
Yeah.
guess, eh?
Yep, that's right. I guess no one has any story. You can even tell us the stories if they don't sound too well either.
I don't have a story, Phil, but you talked about your family having a grocery store. Was that on the corner store?
No, that was when they moved about in the mid-30s up to where the present location is.
So they had a grocery store and then?
No, it was combined with clothing.
Clothing, and
Yeah.
then they went to just clothing?
Yeah,
When did they do that?
I'm guessing around 1938 or 9 or something like that.
And you had a sister?
Yeah, I have a sister, Ida. I had a brother, Norman, who passed away. And
You and your sister grew up in the store,
yes, we did.
and you stayed with the store?
I stayed with it. My brother Norman was born when after we moved to Peterborough.
So when did your parents retire from the store and you took over the run?
Well, my father never really retired. He was in the store once in a while, and actually he'd been in the store the day before he died. And he was there.
So how many years did you run the store yourself?
Oh,
For your
100 years, yeah. 29. 29.
I think you're lying, Phil. I think you're lying to us.
No, 29, I said.
Okay.
Well, I have one better on the shoes, because we had 6 children, and I didn't used to be able to drag them around to buy shoes, so I used to draw an outline of their feet and take it into Holland's, and I did their shoes like that.
Anyone else want to ask Phil any more
No
questions?
sense wasting time trying on things.
Brenda?
Phil, I asked you there just before you closed the store about your mom and dad's store in Peterborough. I can remember going into the store. When did they start that store on George Street?
They had a store in Peterborough starting about 1945, and they were there for about 5 years, or maybe 6 or 7 years, something like that, besides this one here.
Right.
Yeah, it was ladies' wear only.
Mr. Holland would give anybody credit in the Peterborough store if they were from Lakefield.
That's because she knew where they lived, and she knew what their family was.
Phil, you mentioned 1898. Does that mean there was a store before your parents took it over in 1920?
This newspaper was found in the back of a mirror. Now, I don't know where that mirror could have come from anywhere. It could have been in the store originally. Could have been. Is there anybody here from 1898 that could fill us in on that?
Phil, I have a little story that I have a friend who lives in Peterborough, and the biggest treat for her birthday, is to come to Lakefield, and I take her out for lunch, and we would shop in your store. And I think every time she went in there, she got what was a great treasure for her. So when she phoned me recently and said, my birthday's coming up, and I had to tell her your store was gone, now I'm in big trouble. That was really special, though. And as someone growing up in Lakefield, I can still picture the main street as a little girl, and that will always be there in my memory. Thank you for all the years that you made it such a wonderful street to be.
Thank you. This might make some good reading and maybe take you back a few days or a few years.
Does anyone else have any questions asked?
Before 40.
Phil or at all, or are we down here? No. I remember as a child always just going into the store when they had the grocery store, and all I remember is seeing a bunch of oranges. Got the camera? Has anyone else any last Elmer Grange, or he's got a big story?
No, I just wondered when your dad first started to curl.
When your dad first started to grow? Do you remember much of it?
I can't honestly say I remember the first time he started to curl. Actually, he was curling the day before he died.
They curled me and the vice skip strong, we won the trophy that year. That was, he hadn't curled much before that, quite pleased with that.
What year was that?
That's in the early 60s.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for taking shoes, just coming in and taking shoes. Because I remember going into the store one time with Terry. He was about 14 or 15. And he complained that his feet looked too small. His feet were too small. And he had about 17 pair of shoes on your floor, trying to get ones to make his feet look longer. Oh, I can't remember. But I know when we walked out, the floor was covered with shoes. Trying to make his feet look bigger.
Probably still there.
Has anyone else any more stories that they'd like to tell us or ask Phil any more questions?
What year did you move to Peterborough, Phil? Do you remember?
Yeah, about 1942 or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, about 42.
Is anyone here that went to school with Phil when he was younger in Lakefield? Don?
No one's that old here.
No.
Around here like a flag.
Was that JD back there?
Yes, we were in school together.
Right. You remember how bad JD was?
Oh, he was bad.
Yeah.
Actually, I think there's someone here who used to babysit me. Will Connie Orr please stand up? Tell everybody what a good kid I was.
I noticed in the pictures went around too, that the house is still the same house. I said we can pick it out. One of the waters.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for. Yeah.
On behalf of our society, I really like to thank you, Phil, for the immense preparation and the many fine memories you had of and memories you triggered in us of things in Lakefield and times past, and I appreciate your coming with this evening.
you have no more questions, I guess we'll just have coffee and donuts here, or cookies. Right, Kit?
If you still